Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hidden growth opportunities throughout online business. We're your hosts. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Sarah, and thanks for joining us for our latest episode. So today we'll be speaking with Alex Champagne, our Director of Sales. He's here to explain our new blended commission structure being rolled out at Empire Flippers.
Yeah, that's right. Alex catches us up on where the market is now and the state of our marketplace. And we discuss all the recent growth over the course of 2021 and why we are updating our commission structure. He goes over the new commission breakdown and how it will play out in deals and why this commission makes sense for our buyers and both sellers. But we don't want to give away too much just yet. So why don't we dig into the interview and see what Alex has to share. And then at the end of the episode, we'll go over some of the best questions that highlight the opportunities we've learned about in today's episode. So let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast. We have a special guest today to speak about a new blended commission structure that we're rolling out with Empire Flippers, and it's Alex Champagne. So welcome to the show, Alex. Again, nice to have you back on.
Yeah, glad to be here. Good to talk with y'all.
Yeah, it's nice to finally catch back up with you. I know we had kind of a crazy year in 2020 since the last time we had spoken. But yeah, for our listeners that might not have catched that call or heard that episode, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our new listeners and where you are in the world now?
Yeah, sure. So I am the Director of Sales here at Empire Flippers. It's basically my role to oversee the sales team on both the seller side and the buyer side and make sure that, we're doing the best we can to give the best experience for both of those parties. Yeah, I'm in Houston, Texas, so nowhere cool or fun to talk about, but this is where my family is. And yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it, I guess.
Awesome. This might feel like maybe an obvious question, something we talked about last time, but it's worth just setting the stage here. For our listeners who might not be familiar with, M&A brokers and commissions, can you just walk us through the benefits of, say, using a broker and why anyone should decide to use a broker when buying or selling an online business, even though they know that there's going to be some sort of commission along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, this is one that we talk about a lot internally within the sales team and also with prospective sellers and buyers as well. But I'd say primarily the contrast or kind of the difference in experience that you're going to receive is only getting greater as we have more people entering into this market and there's more appetite to acquire online businesses. So just a couple examples that come to mind are, specifically in the FBA space, there's been, I think, well over $1 billion raised in the last 6 months to specifically acquire FBA deals. So if you're working with, even one or two of these professional groups, these aggregators that are acquiring these businesses, and you're not experienced in selling an online business, you're not putting it in front of all the different aggregators, you're definitely leaving money on the table. And we've seen this time and time again over the last 6 months where we've had someone who's had an LOI that seems, relatively good. And we kind of work with them and get them to understand the importance of having competition around the actual acquisition process. And if you're not putting it in front of qualified people who are actively looking for your business, you're going to leave money on the table. And that's exactly what we've seen. We've been able to get massive increases on sales prices compared to what they would have received just doing it privately. And on top of that, you get the full suite of our services as well in terms of vetting the actual sales process, getting more for your business. And then we're actually going to help you migrate that business as well and make sure that it's a much smoother process than kind of going out alone. You wouldn't, you might be able to sell your own house by yourself. That's a pretty established market. But selling your business is usually, a once or a couple times in a lifetime type of thing. And there's a lot of complications that go into it. And we pride ourselves on making the process not only efficient and smooth for both the buyer and the seller, but also making sure that the deal makes sense for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's an amazing mention, Alex. It's something that sellers, they should definitely consider putting their business in front of more buyers or potential buyers instead of going with, say, like a private deal or looking for other sources to source their deal or their acquisition. Because ultimately you're creating a bidding war, and the fact that we do offer the largest curated marketplace and, with the most verified liquidity in the market for these types of deals really sets yourself up for, a great exit and getting the most out of your business when you do decide to make that exit. Now, we've always offered a competitive commission structure, being one of the leading M&A brokers for online businesses and the largest curated marketplace, as I mentioned. But for those who might not be familiar, what was our past commission structure? And can you kind of give us a little bit of a breakdown on kind of what that entailed?
Yeah, sure. So when I first joined Empire Flippers in 2016, we were a flat 15% commission, kind of no matter the price, that's where we were. And, we were selling on the premium experience that we were delivering. As we developed efficiencies, as we grew in deal size, we started to kind of recognize that there needed to be an adjustment there to match the market demand, and also just to provide better value for larger businesses as they come onto the marketplace. So we made adjustments. I think it was around, I want to say 2 years ago, that we moved to a tiered commission structure. And a lot of thoughts behind that were some of the things that I mentioned there, kind of just aligning ourselves more accurately with the market in general. But also we wanted to further incentivize larger deals because that was something we were proving ourselves capable of, and we priced according to that. So just to kind of give you an idea of where our commission structure was, and I guess, is until this new blended commission structure is rolled out, which will be very soon. Right now, it's 15% for any deal under $1 million, 12% between 1 and 2 million, 8% between 2 and 5 million, 5% between 5 and 10 million, and 2% for any deal above 10 mil. So fairly straightforward if you see it in writing. But, there's definitely some things that we knew going into when we set that they would need to be shifted sooner rather than later. And this was always somewhat of a temporary kind of stopgap as we refined and reviewed numbers to come up with a more concrete plan that we would keep in place. And that's ultimately how we arrived to the blended commission that we're going to be rolling out.
On that note, would you say that, there was a disadvantage in particular with this commission structure that you were trying to solve with the new blended commission?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in talking with sellers, especially as we get into the millions of dollars for list price, the gaps and the jumps when you graph out this current commission structure are pretty substantial. So, for example, one of the break points is at that $5 million number. So if you had a $4.9 million number, you'd effectively be paying close to $400,000. But if you get over the 5 million price point, that commission percentage or that commission amount comes down to around $250,000. So there was obviously some advantage and some incentive for sellers to, if they were near those thresholds, to try to just bump the multiple up or just talk with us about adjusting our commission down so that it was more in line with that next tier up. So it just doesn't roll or ramp out very smoothly. And that's something that we kind of recognized fairly early on and something we wanted to make adjustments for. And this becomes especially true, over that $10 million price point. We set it at 2% really as a promotional kind of putting our money where our mouth is that we can sell these 8-figure deals. And now that we have the track record and we've sold multiple of those over the last, 60, 90 days and further back than that even, we feel confident in our ability to adjust the commission to better reflect the value that we're delivering and to scale with the size of the business. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. So instead of sellers being incentivized, I guess, ultimately to try and push their business to that next tier to gain that lower commission rate coming from us, then it's kind of calculating the listing price for the business and taking that into consideration versus, needing to reach that next tier in price, correct?
Right. So it puts, and this is big with Empire Flippers, it helps us further align everyone's goals, right? We want to value this business as accurately as possible. And we want to ultimately have our sellers walk away with the most money possible because that's a win for everyone involved. And with our new tier, our new blended commission structure, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here and what those exact numbers are, it smoothly kind of just goes up. And so there isn't those massive jumps at different pricing points, and it just continues to gradually ramp up with the effective commission decreasing as we get into the larger and larger businesses.
Okay. That makes total sense, and it's really in the benefit for the seller because now they're not, ultimately paying more in the commission structure when they might be closer to that next tier. So can you dig a little bit deeper? And you said you would kind of dive a little bit deeper into what the actual commission structure is then?
Absolutely. So one of the things that is difficult with a blended commission is since the math stacks on top of each other, not many people are able to do that mental math. So one of the things that we're working on developing is an external calculator for anyone to be able to use. They'll be able to put in the actual list price. We'll build this into our valuation tool, and it'll spit out the effective commission amount and the effective dollar amount of commission you would pay if your business sells at that price. And that's something, again, that goes to our transparency. We're big on transparency here in Empire Flippers, and we want everyone to be very clear, what's going on and what they should expect to pay. So the way this structure will work is, and I just want to make sure that we nail this down here, is under 15%. Under 700,000, it will be at 15%. In between 700,000 and 5 million will be calculated at 8%, and anything above 5 million will be at 2.5%. And remember, that's on the amount over that. So it's similar to taxes. If you're familiar with how tax brackets work, it's as you go above that threshold is when the effective commission starts being calculated over that range. So for a good example for that, just to give you an idea of what that would look like, let me just pull up an actual amount here. For a $5 million deal, you're looking at an actual commission of $449,000. So that's how that would scale up. And that's just kind of a midpoint example to give you an idea of where that is. And like I said, it really is something that you need a calculator to be able to see because that math stacks on top of each other. It's almost impossible to do mentally. We chose to do a smaller break or less breaks for how we came up with this commission structure so that it is very simple, or as simple as a blended commission can be. And we reviewed all of the past data to kind of help us make this decision. And we also did a competitive analysis of all the other brokers in the space. And this still makes us what we think is a clear value choice for who to sell your business with.
It's all, great insight, Alex. I think, one thing that comes to mind, we're talking a little bit about, how this impacts sellers. And, I'm wondering, what do you think this is going to mean for them going forward? And, does this happen to have a ripple effect and change how we move about doing deals in the near future?
Yeah, I don't know if it will have as big of an effect on how we operate, because at the end of the day, we're looking to do is to make the best possible deal for everyone involved, right? So aligning the goals of our sellers and our buyers and finding the right fit is still, at the end of the day, what we do as a company, right? So this is just an adjustment on our pricing that makes more sense. And I think as people kind of work through this and as we've tested this and talked with sellers about this, it just makes more sense for everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think switching gears here a little bit is something that you had talked about opening up this episode, but we've talked a lot about this idea of, the season of the seller. We've got all this buyer interest. And I know that the influx of capital that you had mentioned before and the buyer interest, of course, is fueling this change in our commission structure and having us basically forcing us to pivot as a company and, for the betterment of the sellers and buyers and for ourselves. But let's make sure we set the scene there just in case, some people don't know, what is this season of the seller? What's going on in the marketplace at the moment? And, what should everyone be aware of at this point in time?
Yeah. And I think kind of the answer to that question is depending on who you're talking to, right? So, and the why we're calling it the season of the seller is just because it's the definition of a seller's market right now. And we kind of can't shout that loud enough from the rooftop because, if you are in the business of acquiring businesses, I should say, your ultimate goal is to acquire them at, the least amount of cash possible or the least amount of money possible where it's still a win. I'm not saying people are trying to lowball or people are trying to, cheap people out of a good sale price, but effectively for your model to work, it's just better if you can acquire a business at $500,000 instead of having to pay $1 million for it, right? And so what we're seeing is the tolerance for multiples has just gone through the roof, especially for certain monetization methods on the marketplace. And the demand is unmatched. It's unprecedented in the space. And I think there's a lot of things that are aligning right now that's causing this. One is, and I think we may have even talked about this on my last episode, which is now probably 9 months ago, a year ago, we were just early stages in this, is we're seeing a lot of traditional money that was in other investment vehicles starting to take notice of the online business space. COVID has just further ramped up the demand for online businesses because it made a shift in the market where more and more purchases are happening online. So naturally, online businesses are performing far better than their brick and mortar kind of comparables. So I think that's part of it. And the other thing is, I think these assets have been undervalued, and now the demand in the market is starting to prove that out. Where this goes is tough to say, but for example, just internally within Empire Flippers, in Q1 we did 47 million in sales. In Q4 we did 44 million in sales. Our largest quarter before that was 16 million. So there's been a massive ramp up in the volume and the size of deals that are being done, especially on our marketplace. And a lot of that is, not to toot our own horn, is us kind of putting the foundations in place for continued growth. And that is something that we've been focusing on. And you'll see that through our growth trend as a company. But also an absolute fact is the market wave has begun to hit, right? So we're seeing that rise across the board. And so the last thing we want people to do is, like we talked about a little bit earlier, is just to limit their options and not at least have those conversations with a broker, or more specifically with Empire Flippers, about possible money that they're leaving on the table by not introducing that competition into the buying process.
Yeah, the competition growing, especially for the demand of these businesses. And you'd mentioned earlier having, some of these lead acquirers raising almost $1 billion in funds to acquire online businesses just shows the sheer demand for these types of assets that has been coming into the market. And I think 2020 had really proven that even more so, that, more people are shopping online, more people are at home doing research and reading into content businesses and gaining their information and knowledge online and purchasing products from home. It's really just continue to grow this industry. That kind of leads me into my next question for you, Alex. So what do you think online business buyers or maybe even sellers could expect moving forward into, let's say, 2022?
Yeah, great question. We don't see anything on the horizon that would suggest a softening in the current demand. If anything, for the foreseeable future, no one has a crystal ball, right? But for the foreseeable future, we see that there's going to be a continuing rise in multiples and the demand for these specific types of businesses. And I think one thing to note is the sheer number of people that are coming into the market with funds. And I think you mentioned this, Brandon, the fact that we have verified funds. That's the only way that you can access businesses on our marketplace, is if you verify that you have the liquidity to look at the businesses of your specific size. There's so many different types of investment strategies, and these different companies and different buyers have different things that matter to them more, and they're willing to pay more for specific types of businesses. Whereas, maybe we have 50 aggregators that we're talking with, or 50 strategic acquisition partners that are looking to acquire businesses, and all 50 are willing to purchase a company because it's a good business, but maybe 5 out of those 50 are very focused on the specific vertical that business is in. And then maybe one of those, it just aligns so perfectly that they're willing to pay significantly more because they know they're going to be able to get a return on that investment with the current structure that they have in place. So kind of a long-winded answer there to answer what we see on the horizon. But I think as the industry develops and matures, as well as more and more different types of buyers come into the market, the demand for specific businesses is just going to continue to grow.
It's all exciting stuff. It's just so wild. When you compared, it was 45 million, right, in business done, and compared to like our previous record of 16 million. And you just think about those leaps. And I think that puts it into perspective that it doesn't really sound like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. Now, of course, we talked about a couple different things that say sellers can keep in mind, but let's hone in on some advice. So, what would you say would be your advice that you'd give sellers who are thinking about making an exit to get the most from their hard effort they put in to growing their business?
Yeah. I think the first step is to talk to someone like a business advisor who has done this before. And this, I always sound like I'm on repeat when I say this. It's being very honest about your goals, right? So do you really want to spend another 2 years to grow your business out? Do you have a plan in place that you're wanting to implement and that you're willing to execute on? Or is it something that you're kind of wishy-washy on, you would sell for the right price? I think it's really about being clear about your goals. And that's something that we can help kind of further codify for most people that we talk with, so that at least when they leave that initial conversation, they have a much clearer path on whether or not it makes sense to sell, begin selling now, begin selling in 3 months, or if they're one of the more rare people who are willing to kind of do what it takes to take it to the next level with a 2 to 4 year type of plan for exiting. So I don't think there's any kind of specific advice I can give there because it's so individually nuanced depending on what the seller's goals are. So I would say talk to someone who knows what they're talking about. Even if it's just a friend who's sold a business before, they have more experience than you if you've never sold a business, right? So just leaning on those resources, doing research, listening to podcasts, listening to or reading content that's being produced is very helpful. But the way the current market stands, you're able to get free advice from companies like us. I would definitely leverage that if I were a seller, because the more educated you are about the market, the better you're going to do. And I think one thing we're seeing is a lot of these strategic buyers or these aggregator type companies, they're doing outbound and kind of reaching out to sellers. And it's always tough to hear when we talk with someone who sold privately and they just didn't have the experience or the education to know that they weren't getting the best deal that they could have gotten. So I think that's where, a good broker is able to provide a lot of value. There's a reason why we're able to charge commission, and that's because we're able to sell your company much more easily and for more money. So your take home is significantly more than if it would have been private.
Almost starting a bidding war at the same time. Greg, our marketing director, mentions this quite often, where we've actually been contacted by, say, buyer A, and they had mentioned, hey, if this buyer B ends up putting an offer on the table, we'll double that or we'll raise the bar even further because we don't want them taking over the asset. And I think that's an amazing opportunity that you just wouldn't normally find in a private deal, where you're actually having bidding wars with these buyers and people that have the money and they're looking for these brands and they're willing to compete with each other almost to buy your business. And it's a great opportunity, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of times where we've had buyers tell us like, there's absolutely no way we're willing to pay more than X multiple, that only becomes true when they are tested at higher multiples. And more often than not, everyone's willing to pay more. And if they're not willing to pay more, someone else is. And they know that they have to compete, like you said, with these other professional buyers. So someone's going to win that battle. And it's about finding the perfect fit for you as a seller to make sure that you capitalize on this momentum that's in the market right now.
I mean, all of it's definitely really great advice. I think, you said before that we're trying to shout this from the rooftops, but it really is for the benefit of sellers. It's like, you have the chance to probably make, a once in a lifetime windfall. Just make sure you're prepared, make sure that you're talking to the right people. And like you guys are saying, make sure you get the buyer attention that you deserve. There's no reason to go and sell privately and rob yourself of knowing what you could have made from another buyer. So yeah. I think it's all really good to know.
One thing to note on that, and this is something that a lot of people don't think about, is not only just the list price, it's also the speed of execution. Because we have the deal flow and there are so many buyers that are wanting to purchase from us, they have to treat us much more respectfully. And this immediately kind of washes over any sellers that we work with as well. So if they're having to prioritize, who their funds are going to, if you're on your own and you don't have another business to sell them, they don't have a lot of incentive to not kind of make it as long as possible for them to pay you out, right? But since we have deal flow, since we have recurring relationships, and since they know there's other buyers waiting in the wings if they don't execute on, how we discuss the deal is going to go through, we're able to work with buyers a lot more effectively just by the nature of our relationship. Does that make sense? It's a little bit of a nuanced answer.
No,
absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of, in a way, it actually ties to one of my next questions. I was going to ask you, what do you think is the secret sauce to selling your business quickly? But I do think, obviously part of that equation is working with the right people that have the rapport and have the respect to get it done fast with some of these bigger buyers, of course. Now, you might have a bit more nuance to it, so I'll open the floor for you to answer. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot there to getting your deal done fast.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously the fastest way to sell your business is to sell it for less than market price, right? And that may be an okay solution for, 1 out of 100 or 2 out of 100 sellers where they really just need cash super fast. And that's something we can talk about. But the vast majority of the time, it's finding that right balance, right? And I think, like we talked about a little bit previously, is there's going to be a period of due diligence. We're going to help kind of negotiate on that. And it's going to align with the goals that you kind of bring to the table. If speed of sale is something that's highly important, that's something that our massive sales team is able to go and talk with all of our potential buyers about and relay to buyers to say, like, look, speed is highly important to this seller. So when we're crafting your offers that are basically shopped and negotiated upon, think about that as you build in your value proposition for why they should choose to work with you. So that's something we can do as part of the sales process to help speed it up. But another thing, I think it's always helpful to have someone who's giving you honest and not over-promised feedback. We'll hear that from sellers coming from different brokers or who were being approached privately, and they're being given timelines that are just unrealistic. It can be very difficult to kind of nail down a timeline for a broad group of businesses, but since we do have so much experience, I mean, we sold over 270 businesses last year. We kind of understand how long it takes for this process to play out. So we'll be able to give you an accurate comparison and make sure that what your wants are in terms of speed of sale kind of align with reality, because you can only move so fast. And that's something, again, we're not going to just tell you what you want to hear. We're going to give you the facts and then do everything we can to kind of align those with your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Having, both parties in mind is something that we've always been really adamant about in our own operations, and making sure that everyone's happy with the deal at the end of the day. And it kind of plays testament to what you had mentioned just before this was, the fact that we are, the leading curated marketplace for these types of acquisitions, and the fact that we just lowered I forgot that. Sorry, that's it. Yeah. So that alone, we offered the lowest exclusivity out of most of the M&A brokers that are on the market right now, because we know we have that deal flow. We know we have the verified liquidity from the buyers. They're wanting to make these deals happen sooner than later. So that's, ultimately just kind of plays testament to that, fact that you had just mentioned as well.
Yeah. And that's us putting our money where our mouth is, right? If we aren't able to make that deal happen and we're having, consistent communication with you, the last thing we want to do is have you locked up on our marketplace and just kind of sit there if the market appetite isn't there. So we're absolutely going to do our best to get your business sold in that exclusivity period. And that is why, like you said, we priced it so aggressively, is because we are able to make that work for the vast majority of deals.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered quite a bit in this episode, Alex. It's really great to hear the update on the blended commission structure and kind of why we're rolling this out now for the benefit of everyone in, this entire industry as well, coming into our marketplace and wanting to make sure that everyone's happy with the deal at the end of the day. And normally with these calls, we like to kind of wrap them up with a few rapid fire questions. So if you don't mind, go ahead and shoot off the first one here. So what would you mention or maybe even suggest as your top 3 or however many you'd like tools or resources that could really benefit sellers when they're planning their exit?
Yeah, this is going to sound self-serving, but like I mentioned earlier in the call, is you really should be talking to an expert. And the good news is that doesn't have to cost you any money. So while there is a lot of great content, I think being able to get tailored advice for your specific scenario is just absolutely the most valuable resource that you can have. That's why we have a dedicated sell side team that's there to help with these specific type of questions. So if that's really what your goal is, you should be talking to people that can help you get that goal.
Awesome. Well, now I know that we've spoken with you, you said about 9 months ago now. I don't know if anything, probably have a new memory to answer this question with. So what would you say is your funniest or weirdest moment you've had in 2020 since the last time we spoke with you?
I don't know. I really don't have a great answer for this. I'm a relatively new parent, so pretty much all of my life is weirdness as my kid. So, just like 2 days ago, he figured out how to move his high chair around. And so now he moves it around, climbs up on it, and we left the room for like 15 seconds, and he had turned the coffee grinder on and was grinding his own coffee.
Oh my gosh.
So you have a personal barista now in the home.
At my house. So yeah, I guess that kind of counts, but pretty much daily occurrence of just something weird happening in my house.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think that's been the response of a couple of people we've had on, where it's like, if you're a parent at home right now, especially during the pandemic when you might have normally been in the office, you are having a lot of weird moments with your kids at home every day. So just sort of adding to the collective there.
Yeah. So my office doesn't have doors. So that's the big investment that we're going to have to make is some doors. So that's the next one.
Next one. Awesome. Well, best of luck with Jack becoming an early life barista. I hope he makes you a solid cup of coffee. Kind of wish he could help me out here. I'm looking at a really sad cup myself right now.
I'm sure he'll start a little business. I don't know if he'll be able to ship it yet, but yeah.
I can really see that taking off. He's super precious. So I could see him being a really good, represent a model for the brand. So this has been great, Alex. It's been a lot of fun talking about these new updates, crazy changes, but I'm sure by the next time you come on, we'll have all sorts of new fun things to go over. So in the meantime, thank you for going over all this with us.
Thank y'all. Always good to talk.
Yeah, good to have you on. Hey everyone. Now that we've wrapped up this episode and learned about our new commission structure, we wanted to cover some questions about buying and selling online businesses. So first one up, how is an evaluation calculated for a non-online part of your business? So say this business is generating 50% online and 50% offline. So the thing is, when it comes to selling with us, it's not really likely that you're going to be able to sell that business with us unless you separate those two entities. Obviously, we are an online curated marketplace, so we do focus on online assets, not, say, brick and mortar assets. It's not impossible. It's something that we've done in the past. We once had an e-commerce store that had, was in the beauty niche, for example. So there was a beauty e-com store, and then it had a retail location. In this case, what we had to do was separate the online portion away from the retail portion. So we were basically valuing and focusing on selling that 50% online part as a digital asset. So it can be done, but of course you need to consider, does that actually make sense for your business? And, would selling only 50% of your business help you reach your goals? So not to say it's impossible, but do keep that in mind if you want to submit your business to sell with us and you've got a heavy portion of your business invested in, say, brick and mortar. You might need to reconsider or figure something out. But obviously, feel free to give us a call or ask us questions. We're here to answer those and walk you through it. Our business analysts would be happy to get on the phone with you and work it out.
Yeah, really great response to that question, Sarah. It's something that we do get asked quite often, when it comes to any offline revenue that's being generated for the business. So it's great that you cleared that up for everyone. Another question that we had come in, which is really great, is what is the typical range of buyers you have on the Empire Flippers marketplace? So this is a really great question, and it has changed over the years. I'd say maybe 5 years ago, we were selling more to buyers that were looking for assets in the sub six-figure range. But today we have over $3 billion in verified liquidity. So we do have a broad spectrum of buyers, and these buyers do typically range in those looking to acquire an asset in the six-figure range, maybe even some in the sub six-figure range, but more buyers now that are coming to our marketplace looking for 7 and even high 8-figure businesses. And the reason why that is the amount of capital that's been flooding into the market for these types of assets has grown a substantial amount in just the last few years. So we do have more private equity and high net worth investors that are looking to acquire 7 and even 8-figure businesses from our marketplace. So the spectrum for buyers on our marketplace does range, and it really depends on your business goals and your personal goals as far as what you're trying to look to acquire out of the deal. And that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Opportunity Podcast. We hope that you've gained some valuable insight to the opportunities that digital acquisitions offer. Click the link in the description or visit empireflippers.com/marketplace to learn more about these businesses that are currently live on our marketplace or other businesses that are coming down the pipeline. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a comment and subscribe to this channel for more great content that's released every week. And until next time, we're your hosts. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Sarah, and thanks for tuning in to the Opportunity Podcast.